Hello, once again, Martin Popoff here, back with another edition of Who Invented Heavy Metal. This is our little show inside the big Contrarians channel, where we are looking at the albums, the building blocks that invented heavy metal, but from an album point of view. So remember, I mean, along the way, we've talked about all the little bits and pieces, you know, Helter Skelter and the Johnny Burnett Trio's version of Train Kept a Rollin' and the first uses of fuzz pedal and just distortion without a fuzz pedal, feedback, extreme vocals, all that stuff. Little Richard, Paul McCartney. So yeah, along the way, we've touched down on a lot of those things. And to summarize, I guess we've talked about the likes of Are You Experienced, Cream Disraeli Gears. We've talked about two Blue Cheer albums. We've talked about MC5, Kick Out the Jams. We're actually going to talk about Led Zeppelin today. So we are into 1969. We talked about Kick Out the Jams. I mean, Kick Out the Jams came out a little later, like about a month later than the Led Zeppelin, but we're kind of moving along fairly chronologically here. I wanted to keep it in that American zone with Blue Cheer there. So why Led Zeppelin? And again, you know, I see this in the comments all the time. Obviously, we're going to be leading our way to the Black Sabbath album, and then we're going to go beyond that. But the Black Sabbath album is the first album that I'm going to consider not proto at all. So these are all still proto situations. So yeah, today we are talking about Led Zeppelin's Led Zeppelin, the debut album. There's the guys. My first and second, I don't know what order they came in, but we were on a trip to California from BC in 1976, and I bought my first two Rock T-shirts, which were actually at that time I got the Sabotage one that you see that picture of me, but I also got a Volume 4 one and one that had the shots of those four guys like that, and they were all that kind of just that black rubber on. I think this was on orange. So yeah, that was one of my first shirts. Fond memory of that. But yeah, so the Led Zeppelin album. So this is recorded September to October 68. So yeah, very early. And it came out January 13th, 1969. So we're just into 1969. As you know, the Black Sabbath album is going to be Friday the 13th, February 1970. So we're a year away from that still. So that's admirable. You know, the other funny thing is, and I don't ascribe by this at all, but people say, oh, you know, the blueprint for Led Zeppelin was Jeff Beck Truth. And it's a pretty lame comparison. I think there's quite a bit of an advancement and excitement about the Led Zeppelin album. So yeah, why is this considered part of the Who Invented Heavy Metal story? So, you know, first off, in a general sense, with Robert Plant, you get the idea of the quintessential hard rock heavy metal singer. The looks, you know, his height, his blonde hair, his good looks, his wailing high vocals, wildness to it. So in a certain sense, he's an extreme vocalist. He's not a massive vocalist, but he can have vocal fry as well. You know, we do talk about that as part of it. I mean, twist and shout, right? That whole idea. Little Richard, like I was saying earlier, you know, on our way to death metal vocals, right? And today's even more extreme pig grunt vocals, right? And black metal vocals along the way, right? So Robert Plant's on that continuum. We also get a lot of pretty heavy-handed bashing drumming on this. When there are loud, heavy parts on this, John Bonham is just driving this 4/4 beat, and he's often just going crazy on the crash cymbals. So there's this wall of cymbal sound. You know, that's something we get from Alex Van Halen, but it's a metal thing. It's a noise thing, right? So we get that as well. Now, to go through the tracks, to find the DNA of metal in these tracks, the album opens with Good Times, Bad Times. And to me, this is an example of Led Zeppelin moving a little bit away from the blues. You know, the way that I consider moving away from the blues a big part of the actual invention of heavy metal. You know, famously, I always argue with people that there's no blues in Black Sabbath, right? There's lots of blues in Led Zeppelin. So we know from this record that they aren't nearly as modern as Black Sabbath's going to be, as visionary as, you know, all those good adjectives, right? I mean, people always put Sabbath down for doing that. But the fact of the matter is, you know, there's an element of this being dated in that it is still part of the British blues boom and it's still part of the British folk boom, right? But Good Times, Bad Times you actually do get the semblance of a new style of hard rock heavy metal riff out of Jimmy Page. To me, this is a prototype for Out on the Tiles on Led Zeppelin 3. But yeah, you do get a well thought out, semi complicated riff out of this, right? So it is a hard rock heavy metal song, and like I say, it's modern because it's not just a remake of an old blues song. We're gonna get to more of that later. Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You is British folk boom, right? But it does have the heavy parts, so we get the light and shade. This is almost like a proto power metal ballad in a way, because you do get the fast part. The guitars on there, it just sounds like a phalanx of acoustic guitars. It's not particularly electric sounding, but John Bonham's going crazy for that hard part, so that's there. You Shook Me, nothing really to speak about there. It's just Zeppelin doing a tired, old, boring blues. It's even a cover, of course. So there's really no invention, no creativity, nothing to laud the band for here. Dazed and Confused. Now that's pretty interesting because that's right, I wanted to get the year on this. So released July 10th, 1967. So it's quite early, quite a long time before. It's lighter version. And this was on his The Above Ground Sound of Jake Holmes. So yeah, it's a lift from that. We all know that. But the cool thing about this is that it does have that Diablos in Musica tritone, the devil's note sort of idea to it. It's also an intentional heavying up of a lighter song, and it's also right in that idea of heavying up the blues and adding something to the blues. So the other cool thing about this, so right off the bat, the riff itself is kind of like a heavy metal thing, but there's also that thing I talk about with the heavy metal A-B switch, where he does other intentioned things to heavy this up with those big slamming chord punctuation that you get out of this as well. So that's kind of cool about this song. And another thing that is cool about this is you do get that fast section in it as well. So they're doing something that Black Sabbath's actually going to do on the Black Sabbath song, and it's going to be more important and more heavy metal there. But they do have this fast jamming section where there are wailing guitar licks and there's moans out of Robert Plant. So that's happening as well. So this is a prototype. It's a crude prototype of a Black Sabbath type song. But again, still very dated, and as we know, it's even a lift of a previous song. So the level of creativity here is not nearly at Black Sabbath levels, but it is important, being January of 1969 leading our way there. Okay. Side 2, Your Time Is Gonna Come is just a folk song. So that's, a British folk boom. Black Mountain Side, again, British folk boom. Communication Breakdown is the next super important song here. So this is your prototype of the machine gun chugging, palm muted riff idea. Simple riff here. It's almost like a punk rock song in a way. Punk really should claim this song more than it does, because it's definitely in that department. It's also a prototype to Black Sabbath Paranoid, but it is absolutely a fast, hard rocking heavy metal song. It's not particularly bluesy. It does, just like Good Times, Bad Times, it does have a hint of a blues progression and a blues structure, but we'll allow them that because it is quite inventive in it's simple, but still very inventive in terms of moving towards heavy metal. I Can't Quit You Baby, again, is just like You Shook Me, where there's really nothing going on here. It's just them doing an old blues. We don't need to laud them for that at all. And then How Many More Times is another one that's kind of like Dazed and Confused, in that it is looking at the next possibility past the British folk boom into heavy metal. So, I always talk about also how, America had this sort of delayed growth process where when you had Mountain and Cactus, you still had and even the Amboy Dukes for that matter, although Amboy Dukes is a little more garage and psych in there as well. But you do have that sticking to the British folk boom. They haven't moved on the way that our actual non-proto heavy metal albums are going to do. But How Many More Times points the way towards that as well, just like Dazed and Confused does. So this has the rumbling cool riff, but also just like Dazed and Confused, an important part of this song helping invent heavy metal is those big slamming chord punctuations. So that's your A-B switch thing, right? That thing I talk about with Kiss Strutter, right? You've got the part that might be dated, but then you've got this intention of making it heavier rather than lighter at some point, and that's what those big slamming, chordal rhythmic punctuations are in that song. And then you've even got that later on in the song, you've got that over the marching part. So you've got another riff that comes in. So you've got them, adding, again, intention, adding new guitar parts as you go along, focusing on the guitar. The drums at that point are kind of like a marching thing. It's not that heavy, but again, Robert Plant is doing the heavy wailing around kind of thing too. And again, Robert is part of essentially what is a power trio band, right? There's 4 of them, but you've got all of these guys making a lot of noise. This in a sense is an update on the Cream situation, on the Jimi Hendrix situation, but you've got one extra member. So now we're a power trio, like the Who is a power trio kind of thing, right? So there you go. A lot of reasons here to consider this a big part of the Who invented heavy metal story. And it's essentially spread across, I guess, 4 tracks, right? Good Times, Bad Times, Dazed and Confused, Communication Breakdown, and How Many More Times. It's enough. 2 of those are quite long songs, and Communication Breakdown is clearly something new and interesting, but such a simple idea anyway. So there you go. We're on our way. We're on our way to the 70s soon. So have patience. Led Zeppelin, Led Zeppelin.